recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 21st, 2022 California Board of Accountancy meeting. My name is Michael Savoy, and I am president of the California Board of Accountants. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to take a roll call and establish a quorum. When Ms. Reed calls your name, unmute your microphone and state your name. Please remember to mute your microphone once you have stated your name. Ms. Reed?
Nancy Corrigan.
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines.
Present.
Dan Jacobson.
Here.
Soshi Leon.
Present.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Luz Molina Lopez, present.
Dee Dee Owens. Ariel Pay.
Ariel Pay, present.
Deirdre Robinson.
Present.
Katrina Salazar.
Katrina Salazar, present.
Michael Savoy.
Present.
Mark Silverman.
Mark Silverman, present.
And Yen Tu. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I would also like to thank the CBA staff and the Solid team for their assistance in facilitating this virtual meeting. The CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary actions and functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Before we convene, please be advised that the meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 11133, which allows the CBA to continue to conduct meetings via teleconference through January 31st, 2022. Members of the public interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website, and all lines are currently on mute. As I facilitate this meeting to allow for proceeding in an orderly manner, lines will remain on mute until I direct staff to open them for public comments. I will announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues, and staff will open the lines as appropriate. 5 minutes will be allotted to each individual that wants to provide any comments. I would also like to remind board members and others speaking during the meeting to please use the raise hand feature if you wish to make a motion, ask a question, or just simply make a comment. This approach is necessary to facilitate the meeting and ensure that the board has the opportunity to complete its necessary business. I appreciate everyone's understanding. At this time, we'll start with agenda number 5, which is public comment for items that are not on the January meeting agenda. Please, moderator, please open it up so see if there's any public comments.
I've opened the Q&A panel, which is the source we will be using for our comments today. If you'd like to make a public comment for items not on today's agenda, you'll locate that Q&A icon on your screen, which looks like a question mark inside of a square, typically located in the bottom right corner of your screen. That should open a text box. In that text box, you can type, "I would like to make a comment," and send that to all of our panelists. We will be taking comments in the order that they are received. Each comment will be limited to 5 minutes. I will be providing a 30-second warning when your time is about to expire. When your time expires, I will let you know that I'm muting your microphone and move on to our next commenter. President Savoy, I do not see that we have any requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
Thank you. Moving ahead to item number 6, which is the report of the president. That's me. First report will be on the Leadership Roundtable meeting regarding the California Board of Accountancy. The Leadership Roundtable meeting was held via video teleconference on Wednesday, January 12th. The meeting provided our leadership an opportunity to meet with the executive officer, Patty Bowers, and her executive team. During the meeting, we reviewed the planned meeting topics for 2022. We also discussed priority projects for 2022. One of the first priorities we discussed was the recent establishment of the task force to review the attest and general experience requirements. Work has already begun on this project, and the first meeting of this task force is anticipated to take place in March. Additionally, we discussed the importance of continuing the business modernization projects. The CBA has made great strides in its last year with automation and enabling online capabilities, and that is important that we continue this effort. As with my predecessors, I think our focus on communications and outreach needs to be continued. The leadership team supports this great work and expanding our reach and messaging. Excuse me. We'll hear more about these activities later during the review of the 2022 Communications and Outreach Plan. Another priority will include conducting a review of peer review oversight committee materials, including excuse me, the procedures manual, orientation materials, and annual site visit checklists with a focus on ensuring access to peer review information and clarity of member roles and responsibilities. This will include a review of statutes and regulations to determine if any updates should be considered. Staff will also be working with the Office of Professional Examination Services and the Department of Consumer Affairs on an occupational analysis. An occupational analysis of a profession is required to determine the most critical tasks and knowledge to be included on licensure examinations. This occupational analysis will require working collaboratively with NASBA and the AICPA and include CPAs to participate in and complete interviews, workshops, and questionnaires. The anticipated completion of this project is June of 2023. The CBA will also be preparing its sunset review report this year and will prepare for legislative hearings in early 2023. An overview of this process will be provided shortly by Mr. Aguilera. The sunset review report is critical as it will be the basis of supporting the CBA's continued role of regulating the public accounting profession in California. Leadership also agreed that we need to do what we can to promote cohesive board and develop more camaraderie amongst members. This is a challenge with virtual meetings, but I have asked Executive Officer Patty Bowers to identify some ideas. Last, but certainly not least, is improving our customer service. I think we have a great staff at the CBA, and coming out of this pandemic with many changes in processes and communications, I believe we have a unique opportunity to assess how we are helping our stakeholders and how we can increase our level of service. I look forward to Executive Officer Bowers and her team sharing information on upcoming activities regarding this priority. We had a very robust discussion. I would like to thank my fellow leaders and each of you for your support. 2022, I predict, will be a great year. Next item on the agenda is the announcement of a new committee. This is a written report only. At this point, I'd like to request any public comments from the moderator.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on the president's report, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment into the text field, or I would like to make a comment, and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Next item is agenda number 6. Item C, a discussion regarding the California Board of Accountancy's Business Modernization Project. Suzanne Garcia.
Thank you, President Savoy. For this item, I am providing an update on the activities related to the Business Modernization Project. The Business Modernization Initiative, which I will refer to as BizMod, was launched in November 2017 by the Department of Consumer Affairs. The goal of BizMod is to develop and deploy new information technology systems to streamline licensee and applicant experiences by automating key program activities. It was announced at the March 2021 CBA meeting. The CBA would start a pilot project focusing on a subset of BizMod. The benefits of a pilot approach is that it reduces significant impact on the CBA's budget by allowing more focus and control over budget and reserve levels. Additionally, by dividing up the work into logical pieces, the CBA can incrementally roll out the software and continue to identify modules that can migrate to the new system over multiple software releases over time, as opposed to all at once, and is less disruptive to CBA operations and staff. The pilot project began in October 2021 and leverages the Connect platform, which is Illumin software branded by DCA, and is currently being used successfully by the Board of Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists, the California Acupuncture Board, the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, and the Bureau for Private and Post-Secondary Education. The pilot focuses on 2 CBA product increments, the first being automating the licensing renewal process, and 2, the submission of online complaints. Initial functionality in the Connect system will allow online CPA license renewal and payment, validation of continuing education, and correspondence between the licensee and CBA staff. The anticipated launch date for this product is March 2022. The pilot project will then move on to the development of an online complaint process with an anticipated launch date in May 2022. Enhancements to the Connect system based on input from stakeholders and CBA staff may be made after both products have been launched. This will occur during the maintenance and operation phase of the pilot and is scheduled to be completed by October 2022. Outreach and communication plans for the pilot project will be discussed later during Mr. Ibarra's presentation. This concludes my presentation, and I would like to turn it back to the president, and will do my best to answer members' questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia. Are there any comments and/or questions? I see Ms. Owens.
Thank you for the update on the project. Just one question for me. As part of moving from pilot to rollout, is there a time or time allowed to get feedback from basically folks that participated in the pilot to see if there's things that we might need to change and just get stakeholder feedback?
I'm sorry, Ms. Owens, are you asking if there's going to be a chance for input prior to launch or after launch?
So it says there's a pilot, right? So if I'm assuming with the pilot, certain users are in the system as part of the pilot, and then it goes to rollout, or am I misunderstanding?
Oh, Ms. Owens, yes. The pilot is referencing that we, instead of launching a system as a whole for the whole CBA, we're just taking one subset of the BizMod.
Okay.
Right. And so the first increment that we're going to roll out deals with the online renewals and application and payment. So that's the pilot. And so we are going to assess whether the system that we are leveraging from Connect or from Illumin is going to meet CBA operational needs.
So it's a pilot of a process rather than a pilot of to a group of users. So I guess my comment maybe is just as we do that, it might be great at some point to have a survey or request some sort of feedback on just, the process that was implemented to automate it so we can continue to improve.
Thank you, Ms. Owens.
Any other questions or comments from our board? Seeing none, thank you so much, Ms. Garcia. Appreciate it. Great report. Moving on to agenda item 6D, an overview of the sunset review process. Mr. Patrick Ibarra.
Thank you, President Savoy. Welcome, Friday morning, members of the board. Appreciate you. This item is intended to provide an overview of the CBA's upcoming sunset review process. Every 4 years, each Department of Consumer Affairs Board or Bureau must undergo a review process. The term sunset is used because the statutory authority of those DCA boards and bureaus, including the CBA, contain a deadline in statute for the legislature to reauthorize the board or bureau. If a bill is not enacted to extend the authority of that board or bureau, its authority would lapse or sunset. The CBA is scheduled for its next sunset review in 2023, with its background report due in late 2022. Each year, the Assembly and Senate Business and Professions Committee meet as a joint legislative committee on sunset review. The year before the sunset date of a particular board or bureau, the joint committee will provide to that board or bureau a series of questions and requests for data and other information related to its licensing, enforcement, and related functions. An example of this is available in the attachment, which represents the sunset review questionnaire we received in late 2021. Once received by a board or bureau, this document leads to the creation of the sunset review report, which is typically due to the legislature a little more than a year before a board's sunset date. The report also discusses previous sunset reviews and affords an opportunity to bring forward issues that should be addressed by the legislature. After a board or bureau's submission of its report, a hearing of the Joint Sunset Review Committee is held so that committee members may hear from the CBA president and executive officer and ask questions of them. To prepare CBA representatives for this hearing, DCA executive staff conducts mock hearings with individuals who may testify. These assist in preparing for the wide range of questions that will be posed during the legislative hearing. Following the legislative hearing, legislative staff may issue their recommendations, including whether the CBA's sunset date should be extended and if any of the CBA's functions should be revised. Regarding the report's development specifically, the CBA has not yet received the final series of questions and data requests necessary to fully draft its report to the Joint Committee, but staff have already begun to analyze the questions and requests for data provided to the DCA boards and bureaus that submitted a report in 2021. As indicated in the agenda item, staff anticipate bringing updates on this process to the March, May, and July 2022 CBA meetings, with a possible approval of the CBA's report to occur at either the September or November 2022 CBA meeting. Once the CBA approves the report, it will be submitted to the Joint Committee in late 2022. This concludes my presentation, and I'd like to turn it back to President Savoy for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Patrick. Is there any comments from the board or questions? Seeing none, can we please open it up for any public comment, either on this item or any prior items that we might have missed?
Open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Moving ahead to item 6, letter E, the Department of Consumer.
President Savoy,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Hines.
I apologize. I was late on raising my hand, but I just had a question for staff about whether they have an idea as to how much time we would have to prepare a response to the questions once they were received, like, or to make a comment to ask staff to ensure that when we receive the survey that, we receive adequate time because to review it, because sometimes we get these these documents and these surveys, and they're really long. They're, tens of pages or sometimes hundreds of pages. And, we really need to have the ability as, members of the board to, incorporate the time to really be thoughtful about responding, having adequate time and planning, our other responsibilities around being able to respond adequately.
Sure, I think first Ms. Pierce and then Ms. Bowers can certainly answer your question.
That's excellent. We actually have the questionnaire that is being used for people going through the Sunset Review this year. And there isn't always a huge difference in the questions that are asked from year to year. So we are using that template from 2021. We're using that template from 2021, and we are already working on developing the Sunset Review report. So we anticipate bringing portions of that in March and in May so that the board will have ample time to review it. And then if there is any changes between the 2021 questionnaire and the 2022 questionnaire, then we will adjust accordingly. But we are already in the works because we want to make sure that the board has ample time to review all the information because as you mentioned, it is quite voluminous. It covers 4 years of data and information. So yeah, and thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Bowers, did you want to add anything or?
Nope, Ms. Pierce covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move ahead to 6E, which is the Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities.
Good morning, board members. My name is Mary Kate Jones, and I'm reporting from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you so much for allowing me an opportunity to provide your department update today. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through this pandemic that's really affected all of us in so many ways. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California has implemented enhanced safety measures. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. The California Department of Public Health is requiring masks to be worn in all indoor public settings until February 2022, regardless of vaccination status. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October here at DCA headquarters and has expanded to additional sites and home testing as well. We're working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while keeping safe and healthy. DCA and all its boards and bureaus continue to look to the future and use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective customer protection as well as customer service, while also utilizing telework where appropriate. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. On January 5th, 2022, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that extended the sunset date in Assembly Bill 361. Under this new order, boards and committees are permitted to continue holding public meetings via WebEx without listing member locations through March 31st, 2022. Additionally, Sacramento County issued a local order on January 6th, directing public boards, committees, and similar public bodies to suspend any in-person meetings that might otherwise be held within Sacramento County and hold them remotely. After March 31st, we do expect that meetings will resume in person in accordance with all aspects of the Open Meeting Act. Before attending an in-person board meeting, members must verify full vaccination with DCA's Office of Human Resources or participate in COVID-19 testing. Board members, we ask that you please don't wait until the next in-person meeting is planned, and we request that you submit your vaccination verification by January 31st, because this will allow us time to plan for COVID-19 testing for those who need it. I want to express my appreciation for the flexibility of board members as well as staff. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but we'll definitely keep you updated. Whether meeting remote or in person, DCA truly wants to help keep your board fully seated with excellent members and diverse voices. Currently, your board has 2 vacancies. Both are licensees appointed by the governor. DCA's communications team recently released a new communications toolkit to assist boards with their member recruitment, and this is available in multiple languages. Board members can also encourage individuals to visit the board member resources page, which is located within DCA's homepage, and there anyone can apply for appointment. Just a quick reminder, board members have training and paperwork requirements. Each year, board members are required by law to fill out the Form 700 before April or face penalties from the FPPC. DCA requests that you file it as soon as possible. And just a hot tip, the best way for you all to avoid lots of reminder emails or phone calls is if you file early. If anyone needs any sort of assistance, DCA's filing officer as well as legal counsel is available to help you, and we'd love to. Board members who were recently appointed or reappointed also need to attend the board member orientation training, and that needs to happen within 1 year of their appointment date. You can register for the BMOT through the Learning Management System, which is DCA's training portal. Live trainings will be held on March 9th, June 15th, and October 12th of this year. And although this training isn't required, well, it is required for all of our newly appointed members and reappointed members, we also encourage any member that feels that they just need a refresher to come and join us. We'd love to have you. Board and Bureau Relations is happy to assist in any way we can, so please let me know if you have any questions with BMOT or LMS. And as always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. And I'm happy to pass it back over to President Savoy now and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Great report. I have a question from Mr. Dan Jacobson.
Yes, Ms. Jones, you mentioned that the County of Sacramento has an order banning in-person meetings of public entities. Is there an end date that they have on that? They being the county?
Right. That's a brilliant question. I'm happy to look further into that and provide more to Ms. Bowers to share with you all. I don't have that answer at the moment.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further questions of our board members? Please open it up if there's any public comments or questions, please.
We've opened that Q&A panel. If you have any questions or comments for the presentation you just heard, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" or "comment" into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. And not seeing any requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you.
It is closed.
And I'd like to thank you again, Ms. Jones. I do want to emphasize that we are, I believe we're 3 short in the CPA area on this board, and any assistance that you need whatsoever from anybody on the board or the executive office would be happy to help you securing some additional members for this board. Again, I'd like to thank you and look forward to your 2 months, your next report.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, moving ahead to item 7. Looks like our vice president gets off light this year or this month. No report. Good job, Mark. Next, the report of our secretary treasurer, Katrina Salazar.
President. The first item is 8A, and that is the governor's budget that is in your packet. And I wanted to share with you that this proposed budget for our fiscal year 22-23 was just recently released on January 10th of this year. And the California Board of Accountancy's proposed budget is $17,898,000. This is an increase from the current year's budget allotment of $17,614,000. Details regarding the final budget after it's approved by the legislature and the governor will be provided at the Board of Accountancy meeting in July 2022. With that, I would like to turn it back to the president to ask if there are any questions from the group.
Any questions of Ms. Salazar or staff regarding the proposed budget? Seeing none.
Okay.
Move on.
Thank you. The next item is item 8B, the Secretary Treasurer Report. And within the materials that have been provided for everyone online is reports that contain the first quarter financial report for fiscal year 21-22. So just as a reminder, our fiscal year starts in July of 2021 and runs through June 30th of this year, 2022. The budget authority for our current fiscal year, as mentioned before, is $17,614,000. If you view page 2, this report is titled Fiscal Month 3 Financial Statement, and the actual expenditures and encumbrances as of September 30th, 2021, which is our 3rd month of operations in this fiscal year, were approximately $4.8 million and represent 28% of the California Board of Accountancy budget. If you're following along, you'll notice that those numbers are in the center column of the worksheet. The California Board of Accountancy is currently projecting to have a budget surplus of 5%. And as we continue to meet throughout the year, this report will be updated and refined as our year progresses. The next item of note is on page 5, and that is the breakout of revenues. You'll note that revenues have actually increased more than 14% compared to revenues in the same period in the prior fiscal year, which was the 2021 year. The reason for this is the increase in the initial license and the license renewal fees that became effective on January 1st of 2020. The next metric of note is the Board of Accountancy's fund condition that's shown on page 6. So as a reminder to those following along, this is a reserve that reflects the number of months of operations the available cash on hand will fund. So the larger the number, the larger the cushion we have. Currently, that's projected to be 7.9 months in reserve at the end of fiscal year 21-22. I do want to point out in this report that the 2021 numbers have changed slightly. There's some routine year-end adjustments. And so if you were to compare this to the November reports, the good news is that the prior year months in reserve has actually increased ever so slightly. With that, this concludes my presentation of the highlights of the Secretary Treasurer report, and I'm happy to answer, and we have staff available online as well to answer questions any members or the public may have. So with that, I say thank you for your time and consideration and turn it back over to the president.
Thanks,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Salazar. Questions of our board? Ms. Molina
Thank you, President
Lopez.
Savoy. Thank you, Ms. Salazar, for that report. I had a question about the months in reserve. I'm happy to see the number a little bit higher. I wondered, what is our target? What's our target for months in reserve?
Ms. Pierce?
Yes, thank you.
So I don't think the board necessarily has a specific target, but the legislature has indicated in prior years when we've gone through our sunset review report that our months in reserve they would like to see at 24, which is at the high end. In law, that we're supposed to be capped at 24 months. So that's kind of the highest that we can go. But there is no specific requirement for a particular level. The legislature wants us to have that higher months in reserve level because of the uncertainty of our enforcement cases. Some of those cases come through and they're very expensive to investigate and to litigate. And so having that higher months in reserve level provides us that flexibility so that we can, pursue the case as needed. So right now, the target would be, basing it on the legislature's recommendations to try to get that up to a 24-month level.
Also, everybody should keep in mind on page 6, somewhere in the middle of the page under the 2020-2021, that the general fund did take $10 million from our reserve. If we had that money, it would almost double the number of months that we would have in reserve. So just keep that in mind. We have a receivable from the general fund should we need that. I believe it's scheduled to be repaid right now in fiscal 24-25, unless we needed it sooner. So for them to emphasize any more than we have, having taken money, would be off base. But that money in some way should be looked at as part of our reserve, even though we don't have tangible possession of that right now. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody. No further questions of our board members. Please open it up for public comment regarding anything on our budget, please.
Open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" or just the word "comment" into your text field and submit that to our panelists. Not seeing any requests at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Next item was to be a presentation regarding the fee analysis, which was conducted by an outside accounting firm, Crow. This item is being deferred to a future meeting. Since we're quite a bit ahead of schedule, I'd like to defer the break for a little bit. Let's move on to item number 9, which is the report of the executive officer. First item, 9A, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. So 9A is proposed changes to the California Board of Accountancy Member Guidelines and Procedures Manual, or GNP Manual. The GNP Manual is designed to serve as a reference guide regarding the functions of the CBA and its committees. The edits are identified by underline and strike through. and I will highlight some of the substantive proposed changes. However, I'm happy to answer questions regarding any changes noted in the manual. On page 1, we've updated the number of licensees. On page 7, we've updated language to reference Government Code Section 11133 regarding not having a physical meeting location for CBA meetings. Pages 12 through 14, we updated the percentages of enforcement matters for default decisions, stipulated settlements, and proposed decisions. On page 27, we updated the language regarding conflict of interest law. Moving to page 28 and 29, we updated language regarding DCA's incompatible activities. And on page 31, we clarified the information regarding CBA member per diem and included a time frame for the submission of per diem worksheets. DCA has requested all per diem worksheets be submitted within 2 weeks or less following each meeting, and submitting multiple per diem worksheets at one time delays the payment process, and it creates additional workload for department staff. So we will be following that up after this meeting, just reminding members as well. We have updated DCA policy number references throughout, and where possible, we also changed to gender neutral references. And there were other minor non-substantive changes made to improve overall clarity. That concludes my overview, but I turn it back to the president, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Any questions on this report? Ms. Salazar?
Thank you, President Savoy. I have 2 areas that I have requests on. The first one is section 8 on page 9, item C. Under the voting section, there's reference to mail votes, and my request is that we incorporate a reference that this could be paper or electronic mail, because I believe that might be more reflective of our procedures today. We don't have any proposed language, but would just kick that back with an ask for clarification. And the second item that I have is related to the moving towards the gender neutral, and I think it's fantastic. I appreciate it. I noticed 2 places, one on page 14 and one on page 15, where we used a combo he/she, and I would like to respectfully ask that we consider using the more inclusive gender neutral they in its place. I believe that's grammatically appropriate and might even be more inclusive than the steps we've already taken. So those are my 2 requests. Thank you. I can repeat where those are as well if needed.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on. We'll wait for the completion of item number 9 and then open it up for public comments on anything related to any of the reports on item 9. So, Ms. Pierce, please move forward with item B.
Thank you, President Savoy. So I have a brief update on the report of the Administration Division. CBA Management has issued its annual staff expectations and workplace guidelines for 2022. These guidelines establish expectations for staff to ensure CBA operations meet and maintain our consumer protection mission. The guidelines cover various topics, including communication, technology, and workplace safety, and require completion of other acknowledgments for DCA-wide policies and procedures. Moving on, the CBA is working on updates to its stakeholder feedback survey, which requests feedback for all areas of the CBA. This is just a part of a bigger project to assess and enhance the service we provide to stakeholders, and you will be hearing more on that project in future meetings. Staff continue to make progress on the CBA rulemaking packages in conjunction with DCA legal and the regulatory unit staff. We've had several interactive meetings and we've been able to move some packages forward, and we will be discussing 3 of these files in just a little bit. And also want to just mention that our IT staff completed our security software update in December 2021. This is an ongoing process just to make sure that we have all of our security in order to protect our assets. So that concludes my report. I'll turn it back to President Savoy, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Any members have any questions at this time? Seeing no hands, let's move forward to item 9C, discussion and possible action regarding the California Board of Accountancy 2022 Communications and Outreach Plan. Mr. Ibarra.
The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board an opportunity to discuss, provide feedback, and possibly approve the proposed CBA 2022 Communications and Outreach Plan, which I will refer to as the 2022 Plan. The goal of a Communications and Outreach Plan is to provide a framework that discusses the CBA's strategic communication and outreach goals and how it intends to increase the volume and effectiveness of its activities in pursuit of those goals. While most of the priorities set out in the California Board of Accountancy 2021 Communications Outreach and Plan were accomplished last year, those that are still outstanding have been included as a priority for 2022. Attachment 2 provides a detailed overview of those 2021 priorities. For 2022, CBA staff have high expectations set, and although detailed information is listed in the proposed 2022 plan in Attachment 1, I would like to provide a preview of what we are looking forward to. Many aspects of the 2022 plan are consistent with the CBA-approved 2021 plan, including the target audiences, messaging goals, partnerships, and priorities. The plan also discusses the role of partnerships and communication assets enlisted by the CBA to reach target audiences, including the update newsletter, the CBA website, social media, and virtual outreach events in 2022. A robust list of priorities have been put forth by CBA staff for 2022, expanding on the 2021 plan in areas such as increased number of virtual events this year, including more hosted by the CBA, video and audio-based opportunities such as instructional videos and a series of podcasts, more to come on that later, enhanced social media engagement, and a website refresh. One of its top priorities will be to produce the CBA's Sunset Review Report by the end of 2022 in preparation for its official review with the Joint Legislative Committee on Sunset Review in early 2023. On page 7 of the 2022 plan, you'll see we're on track to publish 3 update newsletters, with our first this year set to be released in late March. To further enhance the readability, we will explore how to utilize the website to draw in more readers to this newsletter. Outreach events continue to be an ongoing priority in 2022. The CBA participated in 6 outreach events in 2021, including CBA hosting its own statewide virtual event titled The Pathway to Your CPA. The CBA plans to produce 2 of those in 2022 and continue to partner on outreach with organizations like CalCPA. The CBA also plans to explore new ways to produce outreach to consumers. The CBA will grow the use of digital content in 2022, creating a series of videos to educate our audiences on examination, education, and experience requirements for licensure, on top of how to use tools on our website as both a licensee and consumer, such as the online complaint form and process, and the ability to report unlicensed activity. The CBA will also explore creative ways to use video content as part of a larger effort to improve customer service for stakeholders and consumers through both recorded instructional PowerPoint videos and demonstration videos showcasing how to use the tools available on the CBA website. One example of this is in what Ms. Garcia mentioned earlier regarding the new online renewals and payment feature. Among other communication efforts, we will be creating a tutorial video on how to use the new feature, and we'll post it on the website with easy step-by-step instructions. The CBA launched a podcast in December of 2021 with an inaugural episode featuring President Savoy, and has a continued series planned throughout 2022 that will spotlight various industry professionals, including CBA staff, and inform while entertaining audiences to the processes the CBA has in place to serve them. On page 8, you'll see the CBA continues to collect and verify email addresses for its licensees, and will launch another communications campaign in 2022 to capture more, with reminders and relevant information related to their license renewal requirements and deadlines. The CBA's social media channels continue to increase in followers on channels like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, surpassing the 10,000 follower mark in 2021. The CBA will continue to use these channels to increase its messaging reach about CBA meetings, licensing requirements, and other items of interest to stakeholders, using imagery and video elements to engage followers. The CBA website will be given a makeover in 2022, as mentioned on page 9. The website is under development and will be more accessible in HTML format and contain widgets that will enhance the user experience as visitors interact with pages. Stay tuned for a demo of such changes in an upcoming CBA meeting. The CBA has already initiated work to update its stakeholder feedback survey this year in order to ensure its relevancy for today. Once evaluated, the CBA will begin use of the updated survey through increased but concerted efforts to reach target audiences throughout the year. Staff welcome any feedback from the CBA and also recommend that the CBA approve the 2022 plan. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll now turn it back over to President Savoy, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ibarra. First up, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you, President Savoy, and thank you, Mr. Ibarra. As always, I'm super excited about all of these modern updates to the CBA. I can't wait for a new website. I have, felt a little bit like that website needs to get updated. So I'm glad to hear in the plans. And then also, I do appreciate the plan to reach out to target audiences, including consumers, especially via social media. I think that's one of the ways that consumers at large, can access some of the information, especially the tools that are available, rather easily. It's just, I feel consumers need to be aware that this is how you can look up a license, for example. I would like to suggest that some of this outreach come in multiple languages if possible. For example, I speak Spanish, and I have many friends and family members that rely on Spanish language information, and I could see how valuable it would be for them to come across a post on social media that reminds them or teaches them for the first time that this is something that they can do and they can access rather easily. So that would be my suggestion, is to please consider multiple languages for some of these outreach events to consumers. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Corrigan.
President Savoy, Mr. Ibarra, excellent report, excellent document. I appreciate all the progress that our website has made over the last few years. I'm very excited about what we're doing and what is planned to be done in the future. I just have a comment on page 2 of 9 under the target audiences and messaging goals, the section for consumers, and basically the very last part of that page. We have messaging goals for this audience, awareness of the CBA and its role. And the first bullet goes into basically enforcement, knowledge of the complaint and enforcement process. And of course, seeing the CBA as a trusted and supportive, competent organization. Certainly, I agree with those. I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a couple of bullets prior to those that mention that we are issuers of licenses to qualified candidates, and that we ensure that only qualified licensees practice. And that's kind of in line with missions and goals and actually what we do as a regulatory body. So just a suggestion for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pei.
Savoy. Mr. Ibarra, it's an amazing presentation. I wanted to thank you for and echoing our colleagues' comments here and being very adaptive to what's going on nowadays. The only comment I would actually throw on the table is let's just make sure that all this information that we're producing goes across all platforms, meaning phones, iPads, and computers. And the reason why I say that, because there are collegiate kids that are homeless, that don't have access to computers real quick, and some are sleeping in their cars and all they have is their phones. So if we can make sure whatever information we want out there, be very flexible so they can access it through their phone, however, so we make sure that we don't miss out on some opportunity for a collegiate, a youth to be in this industry. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Seeing no more, I'd like a motion to approve this 2022 plan, please.
If we could take public comment, please.
Can I get a motion first and then comments after the discussion when there's a motion and a second? Ms. Leone?
The 2022 communications plan we just reviewed.
Mr. Pei?
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Silverman?
Hand up to second. Sorry.
Well, I'd like to see your hand. That's good. Okay. Now I'd like to open it up to public comment regarding the motion and the second on the table.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click on the Q&A icon on the screen, type comment into the text field, and submit that to our panelists. President Savoy, while we wait for those comments, Mr. Jacobson has his hand raised.
Mr. Jacobson.
Would this motion include the suggestions that have been made regarding this covering all platforms that Mr. Page just made, and also regarding the multiple languages that Luce had talked about before? Multiple languages to be, so I think that appropriate multiple languages, we all know what the predominant or the well-used languages in California are. Anyways, would this motion include those things?
Ms. Lopez?
Thank you. I believe that question is for the maker of the motion, but I would just like to add that my suggestions are for CBA staff's consideration, and I'm fine accepting the report as is now, with CBA staff keeping in mind, possibilities there.
Ms. Corrigan?
Those lines, do we need to be so specific as to mention the edits that I made, the additions that I made? So I guess in making that motion, how all-inclusive do we need to be? Thank you.
Yeah, let's leave it to staff to make any necessary corrections to take into account these really, really excellent points. I believe we have something from the public, so can we address that at this point from, I think it's Mr. Fox?
Fox? I've sent a request to unmute your microphone. You will need to click the unmute me button that appears at your end.
Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs, and not to belabor the point, but I did want to, for the record, recognize the staff being very proactive in reaching out to Cal CPA on a lot of these outreach events, whether we can coordinate or provide a venue or platform for the board to connect with folks. And I think I'm really excited. We've done a great job on students and candidates, but moving towards, licensees, and better connecting with those folks who certainly have a lot of interest in what's happening at the board. And I do want to also have a special recognition for Ms. Pierce, who participated in a Cal CPA event earlier this week with a panel discussion on what's happening with the Board of Accountancy, and that was with our leadership group, and that was a recorded event that we're going to put out to the broader Accountancy membership. And I think there's opportunities to do more with bringing in board members into sort of CalCPA events. So I'd want to recognize Ms. Pearson for going above and beyond to represent the board, and looking forward to doing more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
And not seeing any additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
At this point, we have a first, we have a second. We've taken care of comments. Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens, Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson, Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu. The motion carries.
Thank you. At this point, I want to apologize. We need to go back to item 9A. I forgot to ask the CBA to approve the 2022 version of the G&P manual. So at this time, can I get a motion to do that? Ms. Hines.
Approve the proposed changes to the manual as presented during our meeting today.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar.
I would like to ask the maker of the motion for a friendly amendment to include my 2 comments.
I thought that's what I said, but
Yes, ma'am. Then I would love to second it. Yes, please.
To
Thank
include
you.
the comments today, yes.
We have a first, a second. Is there any further comments by board members regarding this issue? Seeing none, please open it up for the public to see if they have any comments regarding this item 9A, please.
Again, open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to submit a request for comment on this item, please use that Q&A icon on your screen and enter I cannot speak anymore. My apologies. Type the word comment or the phrase, I would like to make a comment, into the text field and submit that to our panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for the vote.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens, Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yin Tu. The motion carries.
Thank you so much. Item D, did you already cover that, Mr. Ibarra, or would you like to add a few things to the communications?
That is a completely different presentation, and I'm excited to share it with you.
Okay.
Thank you, President Savoy. The CBA has entered the world of podcasting. We're excited about this new opportunity to spread the CBA message. By the way, we're talking about the Communications and Outreach Report. Sorry, I didn't make that clear earlier, which is separate from the Communications and Outreach Plan, which I just presented on. So the report, we're talking about podcasting, and we're excited about this new opportunity to spread the CBA message and educate our stakeholders in a different way. With the rapid rise of podcast popularity, we felt it was time to expand our messaging to include a platform that could reach more people. We hope everyone will find the episodes we will ultimately produce not only informative, but enjoyable. It was interesting listening to President Savoy talk about how he views the CBA and some of his goals for 2022. And I also enjoyed hearing him talk about his golf game and a few more personal tidbits in the inaugural episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, I encourage you to check it out. But since we're already gathered here, why not get a taste of it now? Here's a little bit of episode 1 from December to whet your appetite.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Accounting for California podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us. My name is David Hemphill. I'm an information and planning analyst here at the California Board of Accountancy, and I will be your host for the series. I am delighted to be joined for this very first episode by the new CBA president, Michael M. Savoy. Mr. Savoy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, so you were recently elected once again as CBA president, and now you've held this role twice before in the past, in 2014 and in 2018, and now you'll be back as we move into 2022. So what made you wish to run for president a third time?
Firstly, no one has ever done it before, so I found that to be quite novel. But secondly, I just love leading this great institution and lending my experience and my expertise to accomplish the goals of the CBA while always keeping in mind that public protection of the consumer is at the forefront of all the actions that we do at the CBA.
Very good. What are some of the priorities, President Savoy, that you would like to see the CBA achieve during 2022?
Well, I think the number one for me is preparing for another successful sunset review. Every few years, we come before the legislature and having to justify our existence. I think we've done very well over the years in providing the information to the legislature as to why we exist. So I think setting us up for another successful sunset review is probably at the foremost of this year's activity. And another thing that I'm involved in is California continues to be one of few states that offers two licensed tracks, which is the A track and the G track. We're going to be reviewing whether we will continue to offer two tracks and why we think it will be important. And we'll be developing a task force that will be announced shortly as to who is on that task force. And they will be all looking forward to giving us the information as to should we continue this or should we follow the course of many other states and only have one CPA track. So that's pretty much my focus for this year. As you know, things change on a daily basis, so we'll be ready to respond to any other things that come aboard. But those are two of the more important things I have prioritized during 2022.
Well, it sounds like traveling is a big thing you enjoy. Anything else you enjoy doing when you're not focused on the profession?
My passion these days and for the last many years has been golf. And I try to play as often as I possibly can. I've traveled all over the United States and also in other countries playing golf, traveled with some great friends. And I've also played some of the greatest golf courses around, including 7 U.S. Open golf courses and many others in which they've held PGA Tour events.
Such a soothing voice, isn't it? You can hear the entire interview and learn even more about our board president on the new podcast page on the CBA website. We titled the series Accounting for California and are already close to completing the next episode. CBA information and planning analyst David Hemphill, who has a background in broadcasting, does an excellent job as the host. In addition to the podcast page, there were many other recent updates to the CBA website. The online examination application was updated to allow for candidates within 180 days of completing their education requirements to apply for the CPA exam, a change brought on by the passage of AB 298. The Update 94 newsletter was completed in December and posted to the website, as was the 2020-2021 CBA annual report, both under the Communications and Outreach tab. And a web page is in production and will be up soon, featuring our CBA committee members with a photo of each one. We appreciate the service of each committee member and wanted to feature them on the website, so the spotlight is well deserved. After the success of video content we created in 2021, the CBA is planning even more this year. And in the spirit of high expectations you just heard me say that we've put forth in the 2022 Communications and Outreach Plan, I'm excited to say we already have one done. The first video of 2022 is an instructional one aimed to help licensing candidates complete the online CPA application. It was recently posted to our website and on social media. And if you'll bear with me, I'd like to share the video with you now for your viewing pleasure. It's important you see how we can utilize video content to educate visitors coming to our page. So, without further ado,
The CBA's new online application for CPA licensure was designed to make the entire application process simpler and more streamlined, saving you time and hassle. In this video, we'll show you how to navigate your way through the process. So let's begin by heading to the CBA website, www.cba.ca.gov. You'll notice a graphic about the online application right on the home page. Click it, and you'll be taken to a page with lots of information about the online application. Once you click through to the online app, you'll notice a series of several tabs at the top of the page. These tabs allow for quick navigation through the application. You can also advance through the app by clicking the Next or Back buttons on the bottom. It's okay to click around to various parts of the form at any time, but you won't be able to submit your application until all the mandatory fields, notated with red asterisks, are completed. The first thing you need to do is select which application type applies to you from the list of 6 options. This choice is important because your entire application experience will be tailored to the type of candidate you are. Not all application types require the same materials to be submitted, and the online application will let you know exactly what to have you do or not do based on your selection. After you make your selection, you will also be informed how much your application processing fee will be. Under the Applicant Info tab is where you provide us with your personal information. Certain answers may prompt other questions. For example, if you answer yes to currently serving in the military, a button will pop up allowing you to provide supporting documentation. If education information is required, you will need to provide it for at least one school or for an evaluation on the education page. Click the appropriate green button to add a school. On the experience page, click the green button to enter your experience information. You will be asked if you have submitted your experience form yet. You can upload it right here if you have it ready, or if not, let us know whether you plan to send it by mail or email. Please be aware that we do accept electronic signatures on the work experience form. It is okay to apply without your form, but don't wait too long to send it in. Otherwise, you will be sent a deficiency letter informing you we still need it, which may delay your application review time. The signature page is fun. You can choose to type in your signature, upload one you may have on file, or select to draw it yourself. If you choose to save the application to submit later, you will need to redo your signature then. Now, on to payment, which will be done with a credit card. Remember, you'll be paying your application processing fee at this time, but you will also be asked if you would like to pay your initial license fee now as well. This fee isn't due until you're approved for licensure, but paying here could speed things up a bit for you. If you choose not to pay it now, you will need to pay it with a check or money order when you are approved. It's totally up to you. If you do choose to pay your initial license fee now, you will be asked to provide specific information, such as exactly how you'd like your name to be displayed on the CBA website's license lookup, and what your official address of record will be. Again, getting all of this out of the way now will save time and get you your CPA license number faster once you are approved. Your credit card information will be processed immediately, and you will be emailed a receipt from Converge, the payment processing service we use. Applicants with appropriate military or refugee, asylee, or special immigrant visa status are allowed to pay by check or money order instead of credit card. When your payment has been made, the Submit screen gives you final instructions and the option to print a copy of your application for your records before submitting it. Remember, you do have the option to save your progress at any time before you submit. So that way you wouldn't have to start from scratch if you were missing one piece of information. Then, once you click the blue Submit button, you're all done. You'll receive an email from the CBA acknowledging that your application has been received, which will contain a link to your personal dashboard, where you can follow along your application's progress as it gets reviewed. If you have questions along the way, you should be able to find the answers on the CBA website, or you can always email the CBA's initial licensing unit anytime with questions at licensinginfo@cba.ca.gov. We hope this online application feature makes the entire process of applying for your license a positive one, and wish you all the best in your quest to become a CPA.
There's that David Hemphill guy again, this time as narrator of the video. We're shining a spotlight on a CBA webpage created last summer, which gives our stakeholders a fast and easy way to report unlicensed activity. A social media push, along with an article in the upcoming issue of Update, aims to raise awareness of this important functionality on the website. The CBA's social media profile grew by more than 10% during calendar year 2021. We're planning more ways to maximize the reach of the CBA messaging to our 10,000 plus followers on social media in 2022. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll now turn it back over to President Savoy, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This was an excellent report, quite unexpected, a little embarrassing. I'm glad I'm wearing red or pink so you can't see my face. So, Ms. Tu, you've been very patient.
Thank you, Chair Savoy. Hi, Patrick. Hey, Patrick, the video is very lovely, and most of us now love our YouTube channel. I didn't know how to turn on something, and I go to YouTube. So, are you converting these video into YouTube channel as well?
Yes, thanks for the question. Actually, they are hosted on our YouTube channel to start with, and then we embed them onto our website from there and upload it to social media from there, so it can get as much coverage as possible everywhere we have channels to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Pei.
Yes, thank you, President. Again, kudos on this. It's showing the human side of this industry. It's not just about numbers and everybody throwing spreadsheets. Just to get a in-depth engagement of our president is amazing. I would have never thought he'd golf. I thought he'd be like an MMA fighter or something. But it's kudos for you for thinking outside of the box. And my only tidbit would be, one thing I've learned in marketing and marketing is storytelling. We don't really have to sell the industry of accounting, but storytell about the people and what we can do in making a difference. I think will get you to that next kind of level of engagement from possibly new CPAs. And my last one is I would definitely start looking into Clubhouse. It's this new app. It's what the rage with the younger generation's using. It's kind of like a radio, and you could probably partner the podcast with the Clubhouse at the same time. So it's kind of like an online radio, kind of like your Spotify's, your Pandora's. So to your advantage, but just maybe start looking into it. So maybe we could possibly be of tech savvy moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leon.
The sentiment and acknowledge the great production. The quality of it is nice, both the video and the podcast. Kudos to David. He has an amazing voice. And I'm almost certain you didn't use an agency. So you've saved a lot of money with the great talent that the CBA has. So great job.
Thank you. Ms. Hines.
Everyone's kudos on the creativity and production and quality of the production of the materials. I wanted to recommend that for some of the topics for the podcast, we've talked in committees and in strategic planning sessions about the need and relevance of collaborating with other professional industries that work with the accounting industry and looking at ways that these industries can work together. The one that stands out immediately is attorneys. And, the podcast could be a good way to pick up on a topic that is of relevance to both, CPAs, members of the accounting community, as well as members of other professional communities by having either, learning sessions or conversations or things like that. So I just wanted to plant that as a seed for, possible topics for the future. Another way for us to address those recommendations.
Thank you so much for those comments. Thank you, Mr. Ibarra. Excellent presentation. And I certainly think we're moving in the right direction. It was exciting for me to do that. I certainly do not like to hear myself, but it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's go through the next agenda items, number 10, and then we'll take the break. And so with that being said, let's go to 10A, Mr. Doug Aguilera, report on the Enforcement Advisory Committee, please.
Good morning. My name is Doug Aguilera, and I'm the Enforcement Advisory Committee Chair. The Enforcement Advisory Committee held its meeting on December 2nd, 2021 via the online platform WebEx. I would especially like to thank CBA member Ms. Owens for attending our meeting and providing an update on CBA activities. Our first EAC meeting of the year will be held in 2 weeks on February 3rd, 2022, and we are scheduled to conduct 2 investigative hearings in conjunction with the meeting. At this time, I would like to turn discussion on this item back over to President Savoy, and I would be happy to answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Let's move along. There's no report on the Qualifications Committee, but the Peer Review Oversight Committee, Mr. DeLizer.
The Peer Review Oversight Committee held its meeting via video conference on December 10th of 2021. And I'd like to thank Vice President Silverman for attending that meeting and providing an overview of the CBA's activities. Since we had not had a meeting in August, Mr. Silverman's report was quite long. He reported on the activities from the May, July, September, and November CBA meetings. Thank you, Mr. Savoy, or Mr. Silverman. During the meeting, the PROC highlighted 2021 and 2022 PROC activities and assignments. We discussed the oversight of out-of-state administering entities. We also discussed peer reviewer pool data that we had received from the AICPA, and also the results of the 2021 administrative site visit of the California Society of CPAs that was conducted virtually as well. Lastly, the PROC spent a considerable amount of time going over and discussing and providing feedback, preparing our draft of the 2021 PROC annual report. We expect to complete that PROC annual report in our next meeting and then present that to the CBA in the CBA's March meeting. Our next PROC meeting is scheduled to be held on February 18th of 2022. At this time, President Savoy, would you prefer that I pause here for any questions from members or continue with the related item 10C2?
Why don't you go through all of your report and then we'll open it up for questions if you don't mind.
Perfect. So additionally, in that meeting on December 10th, the PROC discussed and approved the proposed meeting dates for each of our 2022 PROC meeting dates, and those are included in the CBA materials. And the PROC recommends that the CBA adopt or modify the proposed 2022 PROC meeting dates. Our next meeting is scheduled to be held February 18th, 2022. That concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to President Savoy and happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Mr. DeLizer. Any comments at all before we ask for a motion to approve the meeting dates? Seeing no, whoop, Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you. Jeffrey, my name is Dan Jacobson, and I've been appointed as a CBA member of your committee. And then it says in parentheses, rotating. I'm not sure what that means. I'm going to take it as a good thing and not a potential bad thing. Anyways, I wanted to introduce myself, say hello, and the February 18th meeting, will that be in the afternoon or morning, or do you know what time that is?
Those meetings are typically begin at, depending on the size of the agenda, they typically begin mid-morning, like 10 or late morning at 11 o'clock, depending on the size of the agenda.
Thank you very much. My 63rd birthday is the day before. I wear extra large, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't feel obligated.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. It's nice to meet you.
Ms. Corrigan.
Going to make a motion that we accept the meeting dates as presented within the materials.
Thank you. Mr. Silverman.
I second Ms. Corrigan's motion.
Thank you. Are there any further comments from the board? Seeing none, please open it up to the public so we can see if there's any comments before we put it to a vote.
This is the moderator. We've opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. Not seeing any requests for comment at this time. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for the vote.
Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon. Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens. Ariel Pay.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson. Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy. Mark Silverman.
Yes.
And Yin Tu. The motion carries.
Thank you. I would like to thank Doug Aguilera, Chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee, for his December 2nd, 2021 EAC meeting, and also Mr. Jeff DeLizer, Chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee, for providing his report. Your service on these committees is greatly appreciated. At this point, allow us to take a 15-minute break. So let's return at approximately 10:45. See you all in a little bit. There we go. I think we're all here. Waiting for 1, 2, 3 to turn their cameras on. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. All right, welcome back. Let's move on to item 11, regulations. First item is the discussion and possible action to amend Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 2.8. Ms. Pierce.
Thank you, President Savoy. The purpose of this agenda item is twofold. It's to provide the California Board of Accountancy the opportunity to consider any public comments and provide responses, and to provide the board an opportunity to adopt the proposed amendments to Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 2.8. The CBA initiated the proposed amendments to allow for applicants to obtain and submit certified transcripts directly to the CBA with their respective applications, and create a new method for educational institutions to submit transcripts electronically to the CBA. The CBA has followed all the required steps, including the filing of necessary documents with the Office of Administrative Law, specifically attachments 1, 2, and 3, to allow the 45-day public comment period to occur. The CBA also conducted the public hearing on December 28, 2021. The rulemaking process requires the CBA to consider any public comments and, based on those comments, whether to amend and adopt the proposed regulatory text. During the 45-day public comment period, the CBA received one written comment, which is provided in the agenda item. The comment requests the following: the option to dismiss from the qualifications provisions of Title 16 any and all foreign education credits, certificates, diplomas, and the like from the agenda for inclusion as passable business and accounting course and accounting preparation work and study in view of accounting certification in California retroactive to January 1, 2021. Staff propose that the CBA rejects this comment because the comment is vague and outside the scope of what is being proposed. The regulatory proposal focuses on the method and form in which the CBA will accept documentation of educational qualifications. The comment seeks to eliminate acceptance of anything related to foreign education. The comment cannot be accomplished solely via a change to CBA Regulation Section 2.8 and would instead require changes in other CBA regulation sections and likely statutory changes. The comment and staff proposed response will be included in the final statement of reasons. The CBA has two options for a motion to adopt the proposed changes to CBA Regulation Section 2.8. Option 1, if no additional changes are to be made after the consideration of any public comment, and option 2, to modify the language based on the public comment. Staff recommend the CBA adopt option 1 and make the following motion. Adopt the staff recommended response for the comment regarding the proposed regulatory text. Adopt the regulatory text in Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 2.8. Direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking file, including submitting to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and the Office of Administrative Law, and authorize the Executive Officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations and adopt the proposed regulations as originally noticed. At this time, I will turn it back to President for a possible motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Mr. Jacobson?
And thank you for clarifying that you didn't understand. I didn't understand what that letter was doing there, because it really isn't relevant to 2.8. I suggest that this be adopted with a non-substantive change, just as proposed. I don't think it's clear that the envelope has to be sealed by the educational institution, but I think that's what was meant. So my thought is that it ought to, meaning the change ought to say, provided to the board in an envelope sealed by the institution and untampered, comma, and then continued on with the remainder. So I'm interested I'm interested in what other folks have to say about that.
Ms. Pierce first.
I just wanted to just provide a comment that if that is what the board decides to do, we would likely need to go with option 2 on the motion. This could be construed as a substantive change, which would require a 15-day notice to the public. So I just want to bring that to members' attention, and happy to answer any additional questions.
Ms. Robinson?
I just wanted to echo Dan's recommendation. Transcripts from higher educational institutions can be submitted directly to CBA without having to go through an envelope electronically, for example. So I just wanted to make that a notable change in the higher education process. If I wanted to get a copy of my transcripts, I simply pay a fee online and they're sent wherever I tell them to be sent. So they're not necessarily coming, as I understand it, in a paper format. And maybe Ms. Pierce can comment on that because it's been a minute since I've worked in higher ed. Thank you.
This, I apologize. So this would require, this provides 2 options. It provides the electronic transmission. So that would be from the school or from a designated third party to send those transcripts electronically to the board. And in that instance, it would not come in an envelope, obviously. But if it was coming from the school, then it would be certified transcripts in a sealed and untampered envelope. And this has this concept or this process has been used, prior to this change, and we haven't experienced any individuals trying to necessarily pass those as being sent on their own. When they come directly from the school, they do have official certified transcripts stamped all over the envelope, and so staff are able to determine whether or not they are official or not. So it is pretty clearly marked on the envelope.
Mr. Jacobson, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you very much. Just as written, if I were just reading this and deciding what to do, it would seem to me like I would be able to seal the envelope myself, and then it would be untampered after that. And I think that the staff's intent is that the educational institute seal the envelope, stamped, certified all over the place, and send it directly. So in that sense, because it's not a change of the staff's intent, I don't see it as substantive. But if it is substantive, I think it's worth waiting the 15 days to make sure that that people do this correctly, and there's not confusion in the future.
Ms. Salazar?
I think these questions are great. I know I re-reviewed this with a lot of concerns as a board member about how we are verifying and looking at security. And I've chatted with the staff prior to this meeting, and I will say I am comfortable with this wording as is, even though I hear the concern. I read this and I've reread it, and I feel like when you go to the regulatory text, it is probably the easiest for me to track. But once I think back to my days, and it was mentioned by staff, when I got my certified transcript, it does come sealed in an envelope, and the stamp and the identification on the exterior are part of that certification. So if that was absent, then staff would ask the question. So although I think you are you are not incorrect that it would enhance understandability, I think that As written, the staff has what they need to ensure that it is truly a certified transcript, and we can address the educational piece for our licensees through a podcast or a video, maybe explaining the nuances of here's what a certified transcript means. Here are your options. And this might be a place where we can keep our regulatory text simple, but really enhance understandability through these great communications and outreach tools that we're developing. So I actually support this as written, but I hear the concerns, and that's my process as to how I got around concerns in that arena. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I know there was a motion. I'm not sure if that was rejected or we have to go through a vote, or that was so I'm a little confused. Mr. Jacobson.
I don't think there was a motion. Let me go ahead and make the motion and see if it gets a second and go from there. So I suggest that we go ahead with the change to 2.8 as written, with the following non-substantive change, and that be that after the word in line 3, it read an envelope sealed by the educational institution and untampered, comma, and then continue as it was before. So I'm interested if there's a second on that.
Well, before that, can I get legal counsel to opine on whether that is considered substantive or non-substantive, which would require the 15-day hold?
This is, excuse me, board counsel. I will need to defer that to regulatory counsel.
Okay, so anybody have any other opinion on this before we ask for a second?
A regulatory counsel is available if you would like him to opine.
Yeah, I would like that, because I don't want to spin our wheels on whether it is or it isn't, and we get a motion or a second. If in fact it's one way, we can get it put to bed. If it's another way, then we have to wait. So,
hi folks, this is Alex Millington. I'm the board.
Thank you, Alex.
Can I hear the suggestion? It does seem like if it's specifying the manner in which transcripts are going to be submitted, I think I would have to see that. Seems like it would be substantive. I think that's the more conservative approach to looking at it. But can folks describe to me again what the proposed change would be?
Mr. Jacobson?
Alex, do you have the text in front of you?
Yeah, give me a second.
Okay. By the way, you break up a little bit here, but the important words seem to have gotten through. So on line 3, I think that staff intended for the educational institute to be the one sealing the envelope, and there'd be no tampering thereafter. Anyways, on line 3, to make that clear, the motion proposes to add, after the word board, the words an envelope sealed by the educational institution and untampered, comma, and then everything else is the same.
Thank you for that clarification. So if I'm looking at this,
I'm sorry, Alex, I don't think we can hear you.
Alex, this is a moderator. Your audio keeps going in and out. Maybe if you can try
Right.
leaning a
I'm going
little
to try
closer
and
to your
lean. I'm
microphone.
going to try and lean real close to the microphone. Is that better for everybody?
That is.
I'm seeing the thumbs up. Okay. So the text as I see it currently written says provided to the board in a sealed and untampered envelope. And I think that, and I'm just sort of giving you my off the cuff opinion here, that it is implied that the envelope would be sealed and untampered from its point of origin, which would be the institution, right? But you're clarifying here that it must be sealed and untampered by the institution. And so, you know, and I'm open to kind of discuss this further after the meeting, but I think it's at least possible that that is a substantive change. And typically in those types of situations, I want to err on the side of caution and say that, yeah, if it can be construed as a substantive change, where here, again, if I'm hearing the proposal correctly, the idea would be that you are specifying that the sealing must be done by a certain party, that it does, strictly speaking, modify the effect of the rule. I guess the argument would be that the previous interpretation would be that, of course, it would have been sealed by the institution, but it's sort of a what's the right term for it? It's if you're clarifying a perceived ambiguity, then you're conceding that you're making a change to what the rule is doing. So thinking it out like that, then yes, I think that it is conservatively construable as a substantive change.
Ms. Corrigan?
Boy, but Alex, if we go on to line 4, it says from the educational institution. It seems unlikely to me that in the middle of all that, somehow the candidate would be handling, you know, and be in the middle of that process. Does that help with what you have just said?
I'm making a very the most conservative possible, and that I understand from that perspective. Provided to the board in a sealed and untampered envelope. The education does heavily imply that the education institution is doing the sealing. In some respect, it doesn't literally say that. So, you know, even though in realistic practice, there wouldn't be much of a difference, I always try to be the most conservative, because the consequence of floating to the Office of Administrative Law a change which is which perceived to be substantive, but has been concluded at a board meeting as non-substantive, can become problematic, where because the consequence of that is that you got to go back out to the 15-day, and there really isn't much discussion there with OAL. So I wish I could give sort of a hard and fast answer of this is exactly what's going to happen. But in situations like this, I think the advice that I sometimes give is to take the most conservative possible approach. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I can. I guess I would say this. The clarification of the language begs the question of why it is being clarified. If there is a clarification, then the presumption is that there was something about the existing language that offered an ambiguity. And by clarifying the ambiguity, you're altering the way the rule operates. So if the ambiguity underlying this is that it does not specify clearly enough that it is the institution that must do the sealing, then what you are tacitly saying is that somebody else could be doing it under the current construction of the rule, and thereby changing this to eliminate that possibility. You are fundamentally changing the way the rule operates to eliminate a potential bad outcome.
Okay. Ms. Hines.
It is if it is not substantive, it's not necessary. Or in order for it to be necessary, it is implied that it is substantive. In which case, then the 15-day, the requirement of reposting it is necessary. If it is not substantive, then we would not need to post it. But then the way I interpret that is if it's not substantive, it's unnecessary. It's more, it's an opinion, it's subjective. And then the question to the board is whether or not we accept Mr. Jacobson's, non-substantive, subjective opinion that there's a need to change this and we just need to have a vote. But if it's necessary, then I think that's implied that it's substantive, in which case then we have to repost it.
Thank you. Last comment on this, Ms. Corrigan. We'll bring it back to Mr. Jacobson afterwards. Then we'll see if there's a second on his motion and whether we need to take a vote or not. So Ms. Corrigan first.
Boy, I just want to point out in line 3, untampered envelope means to me that student, graduate, whatever, should not access the envelope, should not be involved in the process. That is what untampered envelope means to me. And I don't know that that requires any further clarification. Going on to say from the educational institution. To me, that speaks pretty clearly. If I'm the student, I get involved in the process, I have been tampered and that violates everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobson, last comment.
So I think that from the institution, to me, reads reflects or refers to the electronic transmission and not the envelope. I would like to change my motion because I had the word non-substantive in there, and the very fact that that different ones of us are reading this differently, I think shows that there's an ambiguity, and that we may that someone may have to go to a podcast or be taught how to do this in class, or that there may if there may be a rejection from the CBA with an explanation, tells us that we should make it clearer, and if that's substantive, then that's substantive. So to prevent all sorts of problems that could come up in the future, I move that this be changed, that 2.8 be adopted with the following change. On line 3, after the words board in, the following words be added: an envelope sealed by the Educational Institute and untampered, comma, and then it be continue on as read. And if we have to go, if that means going through the 15-day posting period, then I think it's worth 5 years from now not having to go through a bunch of other things.
All right, so we have a motion on the table, as you've all heard. Is there a second on this motion? Ms. Lopez?
I will second.
All right, any further discussion on this item? Ms. Hines?
With suggesting that the discussion it attests to there being an ambiguity. The ambiguity is in the conversation and discussion about the recommended change. I mean, that's why we're having a conversation. We're not having a conversation because we are all in agreement that there needs to be a change. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Mr. Jacobson, you're quite an effective advocate. And, but just because you're an effective advocate doesn't mean that you are accurate or you're right. You have your opinion, but that doesn't make it factual.
Okay, so before a vote, can we please open this up to public comment on this particular motion before we vote on it, please?
Open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the motion before you, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" or simply the word "comment" into the text field and submit that to our panelists. Not seeing any requests for comment. Would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
So right before we take a vote, I just want everybody to understand that this motion, to me, clears up some perceived ambiguity. Therefore, a passage of this motion would bring this back for another 15-day window. With that being said, Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
No.
Dan Jacobson, Soshi Leon,
No.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens,
No.
Ariel Pay, Deirdre Robinson,
No.
Katrina Salazar,
No.
Michael Savoy, Mark Silverman,
No.
and Yin Tu. And the motion failed.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for another vote, please? Ms. Salazar? I'm sorry, Ms. Hines.
Move to adopt, I'm trying to get back to the language at the beginning. I move to adopt the first recommendation of the staff to adopt the proposed language, option 1, presented by the staff.
Ms. Owens,
Second.
any further discussion? Please open it up for, I'm sorry, Ms. Molina Lopez.
Would the motion include the other two bullet points? As I'm reading here, staff's recommendation also includes to direct staff to take all necessary steps to complete the rulemaking file, and then as well, direct the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, it's as presented.
As presented, based upon the extensive conversation that we've just had, discussion we've just had. Yes, it's as presented.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Please open it up for public comment before a vote.
And open that Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the new motion, please click on that Q&A icon, typing the phrase "I would like to make a comment" or the word "comment" into the text box and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for the vote.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
To item 11B, discussion and possible action to amend Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 19. Mr. Franzella.
Good morning, and thank you, President Savoy. Good morning, members. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with the opportunity to approve and adopt the recently modified and updated text to the proposed regulations to amend CBA Regulations Section 19, the practice privilege forms for individuals. This proposal will ensure that the CBA has a mechanism as required under Business and Professions Code Sections 5096.21 and .22 for individuals to submit the required notification form should one ever become necessary. At its meeting in May of last year, the CBA adopted the originally proposed final text for this rulemaking. However, subsequently, after the board had adopted it, staff completed the final documents for the package and submitted them for review as directed to the Department of Consumer Affairs, agency, and to the Office of Administrative Law. But as we were closing out 2021, OAL contacted staff regarding two concerns it had with the proposed regulation. The first was OAL highlighted that part of the language included in BPC section 5096.22, the legislature required individuals to notify the CBA via form and pay a fee. OAL noted that the language adopted by the CBA did not address the fee and must do so in order to meet the requirements of section 5096.22. And OAL also raised some concerns with the necessity of including the originally noticed text that in the form itself that was making up section D found in that form and incorporated by reference. OAL noted that if the CBA intended to continue to use this text, it would need to update the rulemaking package to include greater detail on the necessity of each of the various bullets that made up section D. So based on staff's discussions with OAL, we worked with them and with DCA to develop modified text to address the need to include a reference to the fee and to eliminate any unnecessary and duplicative statutory text found in the proposed form. So in attachment 1 to your materials on this item, it includes a new order of adoption addressing these proposed revisions. The proposed revisions begin in subsection E and include reference to a fee to be set at $0. And as for the form incorporated by reference, we're striking section D to the form and re-lettering accordingly. And that's to address any of the the duplicative and unnecessary recites of some of the statutory language that make up the practice privilege provisions. So staff had posted this to the website in accordance with a 15-day renotice. So that part has already occurred, along with the rationale in an amended initial statement of reasons. So at this time, staff is recommending that the CBA adopt the modified text and order of adoption in attachment 1, delegate to the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes, direct staff to update any necessary rulemaking materials, and to direct staff to submit these documents to the Office of Administrative Law. So at this time, I'd like to turn discussions back over to President Savoy, and I'll do my best to answer members' questions.
Ms. Salazar?
Presentation. I have a silly question, so if you could indulge me. In the new section that's been added in E, my question is there a reason it isn't worded consistently with the paragraphs above? Because every other paragraph says an individual who is required to file the notification. And does its absence there change who this applies to? And I may be just being too far in the weeds. I would just pose that question and ask for the thought process behind it and what staff believes the impact is. If that made any sense.
Would you like me to answer, President Savoy?
Please.
I don't believe it has any effect. And I think this particular one is slightly unique to the other ones that exist above them. Primarily, this is necessitated in a particular situation where the board has determined a individual who otherwise qualifies for practice privilege, but is coming from a state that is no longer determined to be substantially, I believe the term is substantially equivalent, and has been more or less kicked out of the no notice, no fee process. These individuals who then have a principal place of business that would otherwise make them qualified, but are now subject to 5096.2 because the board expelled the state, just makes them distinctly different. But even without that rationale, I don't think it needed to follow necessarily what would normally be normal course of language as it relates to consistency of an individual who is an individual who is. I think an individual who is perfectly fine here as well.
That is incredibly sufficient, and I say thank you, Mr. Franzella. That makes perfect sense to me.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please? Ms. Owens?
Yes, I move to adopt the staff recommendation of adopting the modified text, delegating to the Chief Executive Officer to make non-substantive changes, directing staff to update any necessary rulemaking materials, and directing staff to inspect the documents to the OAL.
Mr. Silverman?
Owens motion.
Is there any further discussion? Please open it up to the public, please, for any.
This is the moderator. We've again opened that Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment on the current motion, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type comment, or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. And seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for the vote.
Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon. Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens.
Yes.
Ariel Kay. Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar. Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
And Yen Tu. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving ahead to item 11, letter C, the discussion of possible action regarding proposed adoption of Title 16 California Code of Regulations, sections 54.3 and 54.4. Mr. Francella.
Thank you again, President Savoy. Members, the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with the opportunity to consider a withdrawal of a rulemaking package associated with proposed adoption of CBA regulations sections 54.3 and 54.4, specifically related to sale, transfer, or discontinuance of a licensee's practice. The CBA adopted proposed regulations to provide increased consumer protections regarding client notifications and maintaining the confidentiality of any client files the licensee possesses when the licensees are selling, transferring, or discontinuing their practice. So as required by the Administrative Procedure Act, the CBA provided for a 45-day public comment period, which originally concluded in September or on September 14th of last year. The CBA also conducted a public hearing on the proposed regulations on the 16th of September. But in addition to the requirements outlined in the APA, the legislature also requires the CBA to provide a copy to all licensees of the proposed changes to the rules of professional conduct 30 days prior to a public hearing, and this is required pursuant to Business and Professions Code section 5018. While staff took steps to coordinate the notification required under section 5018 to occur with the public comment period and public hearing that was set to conclude on September 14th and then conducted on the 16th. There was a mailing issue that arose, and it was not able to be held concurrently. So to ensure proper notification and comply with Section 5018, staff provided for another public comment period and held a second public hearing. The second comment period concluded, and the hearing were both held on January 6th of this month. But over the course of the public comment periods, the CBA received over 70 comments from over 70 individuals on this packet. And for reference, we generally either receive none or one or two comments. To have received 70 is quite voluminous for us. And each one of those comments, some of them were just individual comments, but some had multiple issues within those comments. So each comment could be comprised of multiple comments. And on page 3 of your materials, I've highlighted some of what the commenters had noted, which include objections to the 7-year retention period, the method of notification, concerns with the 90-day notice period to wait for clients' objections, concerns regarding notice to clients impacting value of practice. On the bottom of page 3, I've highlighted the remaining steps the CBA must complete in order to submit a final rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law, which must occur on or before June 8th of this year. And staff would like to basically have some additional time to evaluate the comments received, have discussions with Cal CPA regarding inquiries it has received, and consider possible solutions to the various issues raised. And so staff are requesting and recommending the CBA withdraw the package and direct staff to work with commenters, Cal CPA, and other stakeholders to ensure the final regulatory package provides an effective framework for the sale, transfer, and discontinuance of a licensee's practice. If the CBA agrees with staff's request, staff will begin work on addressing these concerns and provide text for the CBA review at a meeting later this year. So with that, I'll turn back discussions over to President Savoy, and will do my best to answer members' questions.
Thank you, Mr. Francella. Do I have any comments, or can I get a motion? Mr. Jacobson?
To move to adopt the return of this to staff as stated.
Thank you. Ms. Salazar?
Motion.
Thank you. Discussion? Mr. Jacobson?
In this discussion, I hope that staff keeps in mind that I think that that licensees would remain subject to common law issues where they can't just drop a client, put a client in danger by that. And it seems like it's actually very helpful to the licensee to have a specific set of instructions about what to do, rather than following the what I just said about the common law. Thank you.
Discussion? Please open it up to public comment before we take a vote, please.
We've again opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on this item, please click on that Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" or the word "comment" into the text box and submit that to our panelists. Our first comment comes from Jason Fox. Jason, I've sent a request to unmute your microphone.
Jason Fox with Cal CPA. I just would recognize the board staff and Mr. Franzella's comments, and appreciate the take a step back to kind of look at some of the stuff. We certainly heard a lot of feedback, and I think some of that was kind of the unique way that this regulatory proposal is shared with licensees. But I also think there's some kind of in a post-COVID world, some ways to kind of address some of the logistics of how a licensee would meet those obligations. And so we're happy to help, and we'll work with the board staff to kind of realize some of the feedback from the profession standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Any further requests for comment? Would you like me to close the panel?
Please. Thank you. Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens, Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, and Yin Tu.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you. I'll give Mr. Franzella time to catch his breath and wait till after lunch as originally agended. Let's move ahead to item 14, minutes. I don't know if we can take these in bulk or individually, but we need a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the November 18th, 19th, 2021 California Book Accounting meeting. Please, Ms. Corrigan.
For the adoption of the minutes of the November 18, 19, 2021 California Board of Accountancy meeting.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson,
I second.
any discussion? Please open it up to the public to see if they have any comments on this.
Open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the motion for these minutes, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. And seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson, Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Let's bundle item B and C together. Can I get a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the November 18th Legislative Committee and the October 7th Enforcement Advisory Committee, please? Ms. Corrigan.
I move to accept the minutes of the November 18th, 2021 Legislative Committee meeting and accept the minutes of the October 7th, 2021 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Pay.
I will second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion at our end? Seeing none, please open it up for public comment on this motion.
Again, open the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the 2 meeting minutes set. In front of you, please click the icon on your screen for panelists. Seeing any requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens, Ariel Pay, Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, and Yin Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Head to item 15. A, there is no report. B, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. Can we please go to item 2, report of the National Association of State Board of Accountancy's Director at Large, Ms. Salazar.
Thank you very much, President Savoy. As Ms. Corrigan also attended as regional director, I'll just pull a few highlights out unrelated to regional discussions to share with the board and those attending. There were materials recapping at the meeting the annual NASBA meeting that happened last October, and not surprising, some of the most popular sections were CPA evolution, CPA exam, and the pipeline issues. In terms of the agenda, it was the first meeting of the NASBA Board of Directors for 2022. The financials indicate NASBA remains very solidly situated, and it reiterated their commitment to mission spending on behalf of the NASBA boards. I will share with you that the committees have all been active, and they have either started meeting or scheduled to meet within a matter of days or weeks. NASBA continues to be pursuing virtual meetings, and they continue to evaluate that as time progresses. And the issues that I would highlight as being the trending issues before I turn it back to the next agenda item is there was discussion about principal place of business. These are conversations that are bubbling up across state boards of accountancy, and it was discussed that it will be an agenda item on the AICPA Joint Summit later this year, or the AICPA Summit. And just as a reminder, principal place of business is the office location that's designated by a licensee. And there was a good discussion about how that relates to mobility, and a great analogy of mobility as working a lot like having the same model as a driver's license. You and I might have a California driver's license, but we do get to drive into other states. If there's an infraction there, we're held accountable there, and then there's notification back to the state of license. Very similar here. I thought that was really a helpful analogy to clarify mobility and how place of business works. So I expect there to be continued conversations about what that means to licensees and to state boards. There was discussion about the experience requirement for audit and test. California is not alone in considering that. That issue is bubbling up among various states. And there continue to be focus upon the licensee or the candidate pipeline. And NASBA is continuing to look for ways to work with the AICPA and stakeholders to facilitate the pipeline and help bring our great profession to our candidates and our students out there. Of note, there is a publication that comes from NASBA called the Candidate Performance Book. And it is important to share that that publication is actually ceased temporarily until the CPA evolution is completed. So that started with the 2020 Candidate Results Book. And so that information in its traditional format is not available. And so questions are being answered about candidate information handled one-on-one. But again, surprisingly, there wasn't a lot of response or concern. I thought that was positive. I know a lot of universities do like to see it, and they look forward to being able to resume that after evolution. So those are my primary summaries. I thank you so much. I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm sure that Ms. Corrigan has a lot of details to add as well from the regional director side. Thank you.
Thank you. Any specific questions? Seeing none, Ms. Corrigan will hit number 1, number 3B, and C.
Yes, thank you, President Savoy. And Ms. Salazar did hit on a number of items in my notes as well. The meeting was January 18th, so this is hot off the press, you're first to hear. So we want to be reporting back to our board very responsibly. One of the issues brought up was the mutual recognition agreements that the United States has with other countries. Of specific concern is United Kingdom and the pathways or traffic ease of transition between the two seems to be a little tougher on the UK side. Issues with Hong Kong as well. NASBA is working hard to ease these matters, and if they are not, they will consider whether to continue with those mutual recognition agreements. Ms. Salazar indicated that the candidate performance manual is no longer a focus, for now anyway, of NASBA. They are switching their focus to a data extraction project, and they have a new staff director in charge of that. The idea is to improve the pipeline, and part of what they're doing is looking into tracking approaches. Notices to schedule expiring, they want to contact the candidates. Exam sections expiring, contact the candidates, get these folks back into the pipeline. Conduct surveys of candidates. What was your experience? Why are you choosing not to, engage or continue with the process? And working on awareness, enhancing and attracting the profession to candidates. So that's a very good one that really helps every one of us in the profession. The CP audit services is now available as far as states that need help in tracking continuing education and also auditing for licensees that are renewing. Legislative update, the Alliance for Responsible Professional Licensing, or ARPL, who we have had present to our board in the past, is partnering with states and legislative groups, boards, and societies to protect licensing, and their work continues with this whole deregulation effort that we're seeing across the nation. As far as the experience requirement goes, and part of it, a long-term dilemma for smaller firms, how to have providing it and that sort of thing, experience in order to qualify candidates, looking at adding maybe additional continuing education in place of audit hours, accelerating peer reviews and oversight of work for newer CPAs, and reviewing a firm's system of quality control ahead of time to anticipate audit problems. So maybe one way to be proactive in approaching this dilemma, and that was mentioned. And regarding the educational requirement, many states, as we know, are looking at the 120 hours versus 150. NASBA may be coming up with a program or a model whereby internships and apprenticeships would be considered for this process. We talked about the reappearance of non-CPA-owned firms, buying CPA firms. Some of us that were around some years ago know that this happened, and issues related to that, of course, occurring. And this is a process of having the CPA stay on staff to perform the CPA type work while the entity, finance company, whatever kind of an entity is, continue with their regular line of business. So certainly can have an impact on public accounting as we know it. That completes that portion of it. President Savoy, with your permission, I can just continue on and maybe take questions at the end.
Please.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item 14B3, small b. I chair, as you know, the Computer-Based Test Administration Committee of NASBA. The mission of that committee is to promote effective and efficient administration of the Uniform CPA exam. My first meeting with my committee was December 7th, and it served largely as an introductory meeting. And it consists of board members from various states, executive directors of boards, and also representatives of the academic world. We discussed NASBA's investment in software for the new exam, which this board has heard about in the process, or in the past. The process is underway to write the business requirements for the transition of the gateway and pay systems and the interconnectivity with state boards. So that is moving along. Currently, we're in the process of working towards consistency with state boards regarding the 18-month credit carryover rule and when and how the 18-month period is calculated. We discussed issues that Guam and certain Asian countries are having with test site access and availability due to COVID issues, which we're all aware of. It has to do with travel restrictions or quarantining issues that are cost prohibitive to candidates. So having a real impact on those trying to accomplish this. So, and lastly, I will move on to 14B 3C, I participate on the Committee on Relations with Member Boards as the Pacific Regional Director. And we discussed that NASWA is stepping back to remote access testing as their priority. Their focus, again, needs to be on the CPA evolution and the new exam format. And there are also web-band driver issues between Prometric, the vendor for remote access testing, and the AICPA. AICP has the driver, Prometric doesn't at this time. So there's some details and technology to work out between them. Pipeline issue, I mentioned data extraction and establishing a task force to collect that data. So we kind of went over that and hope to hear more on how NASWA can be a help to all of the states and the pipeline issue. 150-hour requirement versus 120 is always going to be coming up here with the states, depending on their situations. Another one, ESG, environmental, social, and governmental impacts reporting, is becoming a discussion item with a new international organization and global standards for this. So this organization is not related to our typical accounting auditing type organizations, but does allow companies to become more transparent about the risks and opportunities faced in these areas of environmental, social, and governmental topics. In July 2022, the new exam blueprint will be exposed along with old and new exam transition. We'll have an opportunity to take a look at that. And pretty much I have covered everything there. And one thing as Pacific Regional Director, California is within my bailiwick, and I need to make available for your consideration, President Savoy, as to whether the CBA requires a visit and any specific topics need to be discussed. So that would be if and when that is determined to be necessary. The leaders of NASWA do like to make an appearance from time to time, and that can be coordinated through my duties as Pacific Regional Director. And I turn it over to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd welcome, as we have in the past, having them be present in our meetings. It was always good to see a representative there. Is there any questions, comments, discussions regarding Ms. Corrigan's presentation? Seeing none, thank you very much. I appreciate that. At this juncture, we're going to break for lunch. I'd like to come back by 1 o'clock. We're going to go over items 12, 13, 16, and finally item 17, which is the adjournment. Anybody taking part in the chair, vice chair training? Just make everybody aware, we're going to probably start that earlier than originally projected, so that we can end this Friday a little bit earlier than we projected. So have a great lunch. See you all back here at 1 o'clock. And thank you for a good morning. Thank you. 1 o'clock, welcome back. I just want to go around the room, take a roll call to establish that we still have a quorum for our meeting. Ms. Reed?
Nancy Corrigan,
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Here.
Soshi Leon, Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens,
Present.
Ariel Pay, Deirdre Robinson,
Present.
Katrina Salazar,
Present.
Michael Savoy,
Michael Savoy, present.
Mark Silverman, Yen Tu,
Present.
and Soshi Leon.
I'm on. I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Right before we start the agenda, I omitted thanking several members of our advisory boards for being in attendance at today's meeting. So I'd like to give a shout out to Laura Ross of the PROC. She's the vice chair. Kathy Johnson of the EAC is vice chair. Jason Russell, the EAC member, and Timothy Jones, quality control vice chair. Thank you for attending the meetings today. All right, moving along, let's take up item 12, the report of the enforcement chief, Mr. Francella.
Thank you, President Savoy. Good afternoon, members. So the enforcement activity report before you today is as of November 30th, 2021. The activity report, so beginning on page 1 and 2, complaints received. The CBA has received just over 880 complaints, which is a decrease compared to the prior fiscal year at this point by about 17%. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending, which are on pages 3 through 5 of your report. Staff have closed just over 1,000 cases, with 98% of those closed within 1 year. On page 4, members will see that enforcement had 600 cases at the close of November, and there were 5 cases over 24 months. 2 of the investigations are ongoing, but 3 of those investigation reports were currently under management review at the time. Moving on to discipline, which can be found on pages 6 through 9 of the report. Looking first to AG referrals, the CBA has referred 18 matters to the AG's office and filed 11 pleadings, with the vast majority of those being accusations. We do have 38 matters pending at the AG's office, with 1 that's just over 24 months. That has a hearing scheduled for March of this year, and we are actively working to get the matter resolved. And on page 8, members will see that the CBA has taken action on 15 disciplinary matters, with all but 1 of them being for stipulated settlements. Moving on to citations, citation and fine, which are on page 10 and 11. CBA has issued 143 citations, with around 75% of those citations being for the 20 and 12 or minimum yearly CE requirement. And on page 11, the CBA has received 26 citation and fine appeals. And during that period of time, we've also withdrawn 11 and affirmed and upheld 12. And the reasons for withdrawal could be anything from providing some mitigation that we previously didn't have, or the licensee has complied with citation, for example, providing certain documents that were previously requested. As for unlicensed activity, on pages 12 and 13, the CBA has received or had received 135 complaints regarding unlicensed activity and have obtained compliance during the course of up to November for 233 matters, while also issuing 13 citations and referring 1 to district attorney or local law enforcement for review. And lastly, within the report, probation monitoring, which is on pages 14 and 15. We presently have 130 individuals on probation, and we've identified 38 probation violations, with the vast majority being submitting quarterly reports or failing to submit quarterly reports and failing to pay cost reimbursement. Prior to turning it back over to President Savoy, I would just like to note that we had a recent promotion within our division for Carrie O'Connor. She was recently promoted to fill the vacant deputy enforcement chief position. Members may have recognized her in closed session yesterday. She will be attending closed session more regularly as a means of cross-training, and she will begin presenting on the EAR and closed session items in the future for cross-training as well. So with that, I'll turn discussion back over to President Savoy, and I'll do my best to answer members' questions.
Thank you, Dominic, and congratulations, Carrie. Any questions, comments from our board? Seeing none, great report. Appreciate it. Let's move on to item 13, report of the licensing chief, Ms. Center.
Voy. The licensing activity report, or LAR, is going to cover the period of time between July 1 and November 30th, 2021. Included in this report is the NASBA Uniform CPA Exam Performance Summary for the third testing quarter of 2021. Now, if you'll go ahead and turn your attention to page 2 of the LAR, there were nearly 60,000 stakeholder inquiries in the forms of emails and telephone calls. That is inclusive of those calls that are being directed to the DCA call center. And that's a 25% increase from this time last year. The report also contains trend information beginning on page 2. As of November 30th, the examination unit has approved approximately 8,700 applicants to sit for the CPA exam. The initial licensing unit has approved a little over 1,800 applications for CPAs and firms, and both of these units are processing well below the 30-day goal. On pages 4 through 7, data related to renewal deficiencies and continuing education audits are displayed. Just note, DCA has not issued any new CEE waivers since our last board meeting. The applications reported as deficient also pay attention that they are no longer include licensees that fall under the DCA's COVID-19 CE extension waiver, as they have in the past, so those have been removed. Table 8 lists the reasons for enforcement referrals. As of November 30th, 189 licensees were referred to the Enforcement Division, and the top reason for that was a first year 2012 violation. Table 9 now reports as a fiscal year cohort, so we are able to report that 623 of the 755 audits completed in 2021 are compliant. 377 licensees have been selected for an audit in fiscal year 21-22. Of those, 226 have already been found to be compliant. Table 10 includes population data. You will see that as of the time of this report, we have a grand total of approximately 114,000 licensees, registrations, and permits. On pages 8 through 12, data related to military and refugee, asylee, and special immigrant visa holders are displayed. You will see that while we do not have very many in the form of military, currently 2 exam applications were approved to sit, and in terms of initial applications, we had 24 military CPA licenses and 1 refugee. So while the counts are low, we continue to receive positive feedback regarding our liaison that we have that provides special assistance to those populations. That concludes my presentation. I'll now turn it back over to President Savoy, and we'll do my best to answer your questions.
Thanks, Ms. Center. Are there any questions? Comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for that great report. Moving on to item 16. The report on the Committee for Professional Conduct, Legislative Committee. I think the only meeting we had was the Legislative Committee, so Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Michael. Here is the report. We addressed. I'll give the numbers. They're in Roman numerals, and then the topic. 16A2. Well, they're not all in Roman numerals. view of the California legislative process and the legislative committee's role. Staff provided the legislative committee an overview of information regarding the legislative committee's role, the processes and procedures CBA staff follows to ensure effective monitoring of legislation, and the steps involved for keeping CBA engaged. There were no actions to take here, and thus none were in fact taken. 16A3, California Board of Accountancy 2022 Legislative Tracking Chart, 2022 Legislative Calendar, and considerations for taking positions on legislation. Staff presented the legislative tracking chart containing those bills on which the CBA has previously taken a position in 2021 and which remain eligible to move during January. In addition, the staff identified the 2022 legislative calendar and a document outlining possible positions the legislative committee and the CBA can take on legislation. Again, we took no action on this. We took it as an informational report, which was very well done. 17A4, discussion and possible action regarding legislation to continue the something on. And staff reported on the passage of last year's Assembly Bill 361, which enabled teleconferencing to continue through January 31, 2022, and the governor's January 5, 2022 executive order, that's N122, that enables the state bodies to continue use of teleconferencing through March 31, 2022. There was significant discussion regarding the benefits of teleconferencing. Member Hines spoke to teleconferencing having led to greater participation on and in a CBA committee meetings. Support an ongoing change to the Bagley-Keene Act to expand teleconferencing and other meeting opportunities. Now, there was a little trouble in a little confusion in making sure that we got the motion correct, and it was checked out, and we believe that this is the motion that was indeed made and passed. So, but if any member of the committee would like to disagree with that, please speak up. The legislative committee recommends that the CBA direct staff to work with the CBA president to draft a letter to the governor's office, to the DCA, to the Speaker of the Assembly, and to the Speaker Pro Tem of, well, I think we mean President Pro Tem of the Senate, expressing support for permanent changes to the Bagley-Keene Act to provide for virtual meetings and support executive orders to permit virtual meetings until changes can be made. Now, that was a fully formed motion, and so we're going to put that before the board. And so if you'll keep that in mind, it won't need a second. And then moving on to 16A5A, Assembly Bill 1498, members of boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs. Staff reported that Assembly Bill 1498 recasted existing provisions regarding the $100 per day per diem paid to members of the board within the DCA for each day that the member discharges official duties. A board would be required to define, quote, day that the member discharged official duties, unquote, as either the, quote, accumulation of 8 hours spent in the discharge of official duties, or as a, quote, day on which the member performed an official duty. The Legislative Committee recommends that the CBA take a watch position on AB 1498, and this is a fully formed motion, doesn't require a second.
Excuse me, Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
We need to take votes on each motion as they come up.
Then, thank you.
So
then if
we
we
need
go
to
back to the last one.
Yeah, we need to go back as a fully formed motion and second. We need to vote on that and open it up for public comment as well. If there's any discussion on that first item, please raise your hand.
Michael, I'd like to read it again because it's, I'd like to read it again.
Okay.
The Legislative Committee recommends that the CBA direct staff to work with the CBA president to draft a letter to the governor's office, DCA, Speaker of the Assembly, and President Pro Tem of the Senate to express the CBA's support for statutory, excuse me, I apologize, I'm reading from the wrong thing because this did change. The Legislative Committee recommends that the CBA direct staff to work with the CBA president to draft a letter to the governor's office, DCA, Speaker of the Assembly, and the President Pro Tem of the Senate, expressing support for permanent changes to the Bagley-Keene Act to provide for virtual meetings and support executive orders to permit virtual meetings until changes can be adopted. So that is a fully formed motion, and I present it.
Thank you. Ms. Hines.
I know it sounds very complex, but the goal, intention, after much discussion and taking into consideration other conversations that we've had about this, was to first and foremost to formally express the Board of Accountancy support for revising the Bagley-Keene Act so that it takes into account the good things that have come out of us meeting virtually. The positive ways in which, all of our boards and commissions have been impacted by, these virtual meetings. And although we have expressed support of a previous bill to amend the Bagley-Keene Act that failed, and although our staff has made our support known, because we are hopeful that there'll be another piece of legislation that is introduced that would permanently change Bagley-Keene, there was a feeling and a sense that making a more formal statement of our support for those amendments would help to create a record of support, and sending it to DCA, we hope would inspire other boards and commissions as well to potentially within the DCA to submit requests as well that would then bolster their advocacy for the passage of such amendments to the law. So that's why we're bringing this as a formal request, send a letter. We wanted to leave it more general, more abroad, so that the president could work with the staff to draft the letter so that it most accurately reflects our intentions as a board, but didn't, limit them in the, sort of direction of advocacy that they could take. It leaves the room for consulting with other, members of the DCA or others to draft the letter so that we can create the strongest statement for the record as possible. Separate.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, separate from that, we are also intending to express our support for the more temporary, orders that are being made to ensure that as volunteer members of the serving on these boards and commissions, we have some, more consistent assurances about what our expectations are going to be and how we're going to be notified. We all appreciate that things are changing rapidly, and we have been incredibly flexible and adaptable under the circumstances. However, we are all volunteers, with families and responsibilities, and work. And while 2 months may seem like an adequate time to give notice for when an expectation would be for us to appear in person, that is not necessarily the case. And so we want to also make a formal request that there be a bit more consideration for, those of us who are serving, on these boards and commissions. So just wanted to provide some additional clarity as to what the intentions were for, the making of this motion.
And as to the first portion, there's nothing in the motion that says we can't show up in person. And so that's there. And then as to the second motion, just, in case the COVID-19 is still around in May, when we're going to have a meeting, and we don't want to go to airports or whatever, we don't want to meet in person, we would appreciate a letter about that. So that's the motion.
All right, thanks for all the clarity. Is there any other comments, questions? Please open it up to the, I'm sorry. Ms. Hines has something again? No? Okay, please open it up for public comment before we take a vote.
This is the moderator. We've opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to comment on the motion before you, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type comment or I would like to make a comment into the text box and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yeah.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines? Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon? Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens? Ariel Pay?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson? Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy? Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Yin Tu?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobson, please continue with agenda item 5. I don't know if you're doing A or B, but let's move on.
Thank you very much. Now I've read what 1498 would do, but it's basically would put specific language, require specific language on your per diem request. And the legislative committee recommends that the CBA take a watch position That's a fully formed motion and does not need a second.
Thank you. Is there any conversation, questions? Seeing none, please open it up for the public.
This is the moderator. We've again opened that Q&A panel. To submit a request for comment, click on the Q&A icon, type comment, or I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that to our panelists. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez, Dee Dee Owens,
Yes.
Errol Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Yen Tu. The motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobson, 5B.
So 1685B deals with AB 1604, the Upward Mobility Act of 2022. Staff reported that that bill would require that by January 1, 2023, all state boards and commissions must have at least one voluntary member from an underrepresented community, which is defined in the bill. This bill is a reintroduction of last year's Assembly bill and is referred to as the title that I mentioned. This requirement will only apply as vacancies occur and to appointments made by the governor's office or the governor's designee, board or commission chairs, or the chair's designees, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Senate President pro tem. The bill proposes changes to the upward mobility goals and reporting of adverse actions against an employee based upon violation of workplace discrimination. The Legislative Committee recommends that the CBA take a watch position on this bill, AB 1604. That is a fully formed motion and does not require a second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from members of the board? With that, I see none. Please open it up to the public for any comment before we take a vote.
This is the moderator. We begin open the Q&A panel. To request comment, please use that Q&A feature, clicking on that Q&A icon to open the text box, setting the word comment, or I would like to make a comment through the text box to our panelists. And seeing no requests, I will close the panel.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, call for a vote.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dee Dee Owens, Ariel Pay,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson, Katrina Salazar, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, and Yen Tu.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Item 16.6A, please.
That is the review and possible consideration of positions on legislation that the CBA is monitoring. So staff reported that they have begun a list of bills to monitor for potential impact to the CBA. They are currently only monitoring one bill, and that's Assembly Bill 227, which relates to the governor's appointments. Typically, bills in this agenda item are being monitored, and if any are amended in any way that directly impacts the CBA, an analysis will be prepared and presented at a future date. We took no action on this. It was simply good information. I'd like to thank the staff. I'd like to thank the committee members, and I'd like to thank the board.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Appreciate your time on this committee.
Thank you, Mike.
At this point, we're complete with our agenda. I'd like to open it up for agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Anybody have any suggestions for future topics? Mr. Jacobson?
Okay, thank you, Michael. I have two. I have noticed that in the newspapers that the president of the California Medical Association, Christina Lawson, has been stalked and harassed by anti-vaccine extremists. I'd just like to discuss our board, not talking about any of the policies of the medical board, but just writing a letter to her and to that board saying, hey, we're with you as a fellow profession. And then my second suggestion dealt with board cohesion. I don't know, it's just an idea that maybe should be discussed. And that's that I had a cousins meeting about a month and a half ago, and that was a lot of fun. And maybe we just sit together with a bag lunch and talk about things that have nothing to do with the business at hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Any other suggestions for future meetings? Seeing none, I'd like to thank everybody for this great first meeting of mine. Look forward to getting together, unfortunately virtually, in our next meeting. But I appreciate all your support and your contributions. I now call this meeting adjourned and see you all soon.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Anybody that's going to be on the next meeting, just let everybody know we're going to start at exactly 2 o'clock. Thank you all.
Thank you.